Welcome, everyone. This is the meeting of the West Jordan City Planning Commission on November 19th, 2024, 5:30 PM briefing meeting. Thank you all for being here. Commissioners Gonzalez and Hollingsworth are absent and excused. We will begin by reviewing the agenda for tonight. We are to approve the minutes from the October 15th meeting, which I just noted were 13 pages long. Good work, you guys. And they weren't verbose. I read them. They were right on target. So it was a long meeting.
PTSD.
Yeah. We also have item number 2, the terrain plat 6. Item number 3, aligned transmission line. Item number 4, residential overlay district. Item number 5, Copper Meadows annexation. Item number 6, water conservation plan. Item number 7 was pulled off the agenda. Is that correct? Item number 8 is text amendments. 8, 9, and 10 are text amendments. So we'd like to hear briefings on each of those items, beginning with item number 2, terrain plat 6. Ray McCandless, are you presenting that one?
Yes. So this is plat 6 of the terrain development on the west. It's 44 lots. Can you hear me? See, we're working. It's 44 lots. This is one of the smaller phases of this development. I think overall there'll be over 20 subdivisions when this is all said and done. So this is just phase 6 of that. And it's pretty straightforward. We really didn't have any issues with it. So what you're looking at tonight is preliminary plat approval for plat 6, and then also a preliminary approval of the sub area plan. So that's really what's on the table tonight for that item.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any questions about that one? Commissioner Allen?
How many to go?
What's that?
How many plats to go?
I don't, it's over 20.
Item number 3, aligned transmission line. Megan?
Yes, so this is a conditional use permit for a new transmission line for aligned data centers. So it'll go along Wells Park Road, south of the Echo Ridge subdivision. And then down the proposed or the future 6600 West and 9800 South to service aligned energy. And the poles will be 110 feet tall with a sag height of 50 feet. And they're proposing some different landscaping. There's a 20-foot landscape buffer south of Echo Ridge, and then the city right-of-way park strip. And so they're proposing to change out some trees in there and the landscaping in that area. So.
I assume the people who live along Wells Park Road received notice.
Yes, yeah, and the applicant has been in contact with the HOA, the Echo Ridge HOA.
Have we heard back from any of those residents that you're aware of?
I've heard from one resident, not with any questions in particular, just wondering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioners, any questions? Next item is residential overlay issue.
So
Larry?
this item, the ROD and the city center core amendments are to bring the city into compliance with our moderate income housing strategies. We submitted the plan in July, and we received a notice of non-compliance because they didn't like my explanation of why we hadn't satisfied our strategies. I'll just to put it in a nutshell. So what this will do is this will satisfy the strategies, and we can turn it into the state and be in compliance. The residential overlay district on this 6.2 acres of property is only a land use map amendment. It just says potential residential overlay district. It doesn't entitle anybody to anything. They would still have to go through a rezoning process, but that's all that's required in the moderate income housing strategy. We had been working with an apartment developer for a couple of years, but they have come and gone and come and gone. And so there's really not an active application to develop the property. So it is purely to satisfy a strategy of the moderate income housing, as is the city center core amendment. That was my explanation was, is we wanted to wait until the 3-station area plan was done before we amend the ordinance, but the state did not accept that answer. And so this will just be the bare minimum to be compliant with the strategy. At this time, I still anticipate in the next year, the city center core and frame zone, all of that ordinance to be amended to follow the planning document was adopted earlier in this year. Do you have any questions of me?
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe I misread the document, but it seems to me like the state was asking planning commissioners to identify any potential RODs in their city.
I think the RDs were identified. We had 2 that we had identified, and one was over next to where the Target used to be. That's now the Grace Company. And the other, there was one in Jordan Landing, but that went away. And the other one was over where the H Mart is now, and that's gone away because obviously it's been filled with a retail development. So the only one that has really been identified that could potentially use the residential overlay district is this 6.25 acres on Redwood.
Okay, thank you. Copper Meadows annexation.
I can cover that one. So this, you've already gone through the Copper Meadows master development plan and the zone change, future land use map amendment. Because there is that one small portion of 1.38 acres, it is addressed in the MDA and MDP, but it needs a separate process at this point to comply with our city code. Basically, just a recommendation from you to the city council as far as the proposed zone and then also the future land use map. So of course, like the rest of that development, this 1.38 acres of land being annexed into the city would be the PC zone. And on the future land use map, it would be a low density residential. So that would just be kind of the final piece of that development of those entitlements, those legislative recommendations to the council, just the same zone change recommendation and future land use map recommendation for this 1.38 that's going along with the rest of the development to the council.
We have not dealt much with annexation as a commission. So I know very little about it, but I do want to ask it almost seems to me like the annexation should have been done before this, but I don't know.
In a perfect world, it would. They're really 2 different applications. This is the land use portion of you just recommending the assigning of the zone and future land use designations. The actual annexation process under state code is technically a separate process, and it doesn't come through the planning commission. The developer filed that process through the recorder's office, It's ongoing right now, but it ends up in front of the council twice, one to just accept the petition and then another time to approve of it potentially. And the whole idea is to try to have those processes match up. They don't always exactly, but your part of the process is just to assign the zoning and future land use map designations.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Roberts?
I just have another curiosity question on the annexation, but you mentioned it needs to go through city council twice. Given that it's a unincorporated county land right now, does it need to go through county council as well?
So rephrase that question again.
I'm just curious if the annexation request also needs to go through the county council since it's currently unincorporated county land.
No, there are certain times where certain pieces do have to go through, like the one piece with the Ochre Highlands had to go through county council first. This one does not, so. Yeah. Mhm. And I'm trying to, there is a issue too with, well, go ahead and chime in, Julie.
I was just noticing on the recommended motion that was in the staff report, unless it changed since I saw it, did not say anything about the land use recommendation. It just says the zoning. So
Right.
do you want them to add in the motion?
Yeah, I
and
think
the
if
land
if
use
it was, when we get to that in the main meeting, if you
land
go
use.
more to the way it's worded on the agenda, if we address also in your motion the issue of future land use of low density residential in your motion, that would be great.
Item number 6, Water Conservation Plan. Greg? Hi.
In 1999, the state of Utah passed an act that required all cities of a certain size to have a water conservation plan, and it had to be updated every 5 years. We have run one right now that is adopted from the city from 2019. This is our 5-year interval to have it be updated. I'm bringing that plan to you guys to get your public comment. If you have any comments for us or anything that you think that we can do to better serve the residents and help conserve water, I'm interested in hearing it. Hopefully you'll give us a recommendation at the end. I have to take this to City Council in December. It has to be approved before January of 2025. Do you have any questions for me?
I have a comment, but I'll save it for the regular meeting.
Good, thank you. I hope we have
I'll-
people here who
I'll-
want to talk about it too.
I
I
want,
hardly ever have people, but I've always gotten really good comments out of Planning Commission, so I'm very happy to be able to come here and get your feedback.
I want the full audience to hear what I have to say in a few minutes.
Okay.
The suspense.
Number 7, text amendments. In fact, just go through the rest of these text amendments. Larry, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Well, what 7's been pulled? 8, 9, and 10.
Which one are we looking at?
7 or 8.
City center
8 is-
zones.
City
8 is
Center I
yours.
talked about already. The alcohol, I have no idea what that is, Duncan.
I can chime in a little bit. Alan will be back during the main meeting, but basically it was kind of a rewrite of Title 17 to simplify it. It's, down quite a few pages less than before, just got rid of some redundancy, trying to make sure that it complies with state code and is in sync with it. And the idea is to make it so that as changes occur in state law, it's less likely that we have to keep making changes to our city code. But not a lot of really substantive changes. It's more just a cleanup and making sure it complies with state law. Title 17, like I say, is all of the alcohol, but it's a land use ordinance because there are land use tables that indicate which types of alcohol licenses are allowed in which zones. That's why it's a land use title. And so it has to come through the Planning Commission first before it goes back to the council. Of course, we know that a lot of alcohol law is all done at the state level. And pretty much all that somebody has to do is get a local license here first, and we mainly look to see if it fits the zone. But beyond that, most of the regulation is done at the state level, right? And, but the precursor to getting the state license is for them to get this local license. And for us, we mainly just look at, like I say, does that type of license fit the zone? So.
I read, or I listened to the portion of the committee of the whole meeting where they talked about this particular item. And that's what it seemed like to me, was it's all about just bringing our state code into compliance or to match closer with what the state is doing. Commissioner Hatch?
Just as kind of an off-topic, sort of off-topic, why do we not have any liquor stores in West Jordan?
Actually, the council has talked about it quite a few times over the last, probably the entire time I've been here, really, for the last 8.5 years. But it's not due to lack of efforts at the council level, I'll say that, or the administrative level. I think eventually it'll happen due to the efforts. I know the sad thing is there's a lot of the ones just on the periphery of our boundaries, right? Which makes it hard for different, to find a good location.
Well,
that
I
isn't
think of the
close to-
revenue,
Oh, yeah.
it brings.
That's obviously why the council's been highly focused on it for the last several years, is the revenue potential. So I think though, with the people in place, it will eventually happen. So.
We need liquor stores and car dealerships.
Yeah. Well, and as you know, the car dealerships, that's in play, right, with Truck Ranch and so forth. But I think this one's right behind it.
I hope there are some entrepreneurs listening. That was item 9. We skipped over item 8 unless, no, that was item 4.
So I think the only one left is number 10, the text amendment for annexations. And there we're just trying to bring it up with, same kind of thing, make it current with our current city code, make it compliant with state code. We just didn't want to inadvertently have something that wasn't exactly in line, or there's a little something in our code now which requires a certain order, which may not be the best way to make it work as it goes from the planning commission to the council. So we're trying to leave procedural flexibility and make it so that we're not requiring something that's not required by state law, and that what we do require is consistent with state law. That's all it is, just to clean up.
Okay, thank you. It appears that we have some training on direct legislation initiatives and referenda.
So it's not ready to project up on the screen, but you do each have a handout. This is something that's come up a lot in the news recently, and it's just, some of the terms seem more complex than they are. And I just wanted to, Larry assigned me this topic a few months ago, and just wanted to kind of make it simple. But direct legislation really is just when the people make laws directly instead of indirectly through their elected representatives, right? We live in a republic. Sometimes people think we live in a democracy, but we live in a republic. You might call it a constitutional republic or a democratic republic. But just like in our Pledge of Allegiance, and to the republic for which it stands. My ears just cringe when I hear democracy. I just, it's just like, it's just not an accurate term, right? I mean, it's like calling a car a truck. I don't know. It's not a truck, it's a car. And just call it what it is, And I mean, Benjamin Franklin was asked after the Constitutional Convention, what have you created? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it, or if you can remember that that's what you've got, I guess, but I just look at these TV stations and democracy this, democracy that, and I'm like, I don't get it, but at any rate, in a republic, you elect representatives, city council members, county council members, state legislators, members of Congress, U.S. senators. That's a republic. Representatives make the laws on our behalf, but there are exceptions, and the exceptions are for direct legislation, which is by the people directly instead of through their representatives. And when keep in mind, it's all types of things. As you look at the very bottom of the page, some types of direct legislation could be special local obligation law, which is special bonds. It could be tax law. It could be land use. It could be creating a new government. It could be changing a form of government. It could be just passing a regular everyday law. It's a variety of things. But what it is it's legislation. It's not administrative acts, right? If you pass a subdivision plat, a conditional use permit, a site plan, those are not legislative acts, right? They're not subject to direct legislation. It has to be an actual legislative act, which in the land use sense, that's an MDA or an MDP, zone change, future land use map, general plan, city code text amendments. Those, once you've recommended them to the council and the council have approved them, those are subject to direct legislation. And as you can see, the third bullet point from the bottom, I'm going to skip around a little bit. There's two types of direct legislation. There's initiatives and there's referenda. The one we hear the most about is referenda. And that's when a legislative body passes something and then a group of people decide, no, I don't like that. I want to throw that on the ballot. And so they go through that two-step process, which is the second bullet point from the bottom, which is basically people run around and get a bunch of signatures. They get enough signatures, they throw it on the ballot, and then people vote it up or down, right? They approve or reject it. That's called a referendum or plural referenda. It's basically to undo or repeal an existing law, right? In the land use sense, you probably heard several years ago, what was it? What was the name of that mall? Cottonwood Mall, where there was a project with an MDA and a zone change and people didn't like it. They put it on the ballot or whatever, did a referendum. That's what it would be in the land use sense, right? That's definitely a legislative act if it really is a master development agreement and a zone change and so forth. And the whole idea of where does this power even come from? The third bullet point down, origin of direct legislation power in Utah. Our state constitution is kind of unique compared to other states and compared to the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution gives all legislative power to the Congress, right? The House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate have all the legislative power. Most states in the union, more than half, probably 2/3, say that their state constitutions, it'll say that their state legislature exercises all of the legislative power, which is usually a state house and a state senate. Nebraska only has like one chamber, but basically their legislature has all the power. Ours is one of the exceptions. And you can see there in Article 6, Section 1 that I cite that the legislative power of the state shall be vested in a Senate and House of Representatives, which is the legislature, and the people. Other state legislatures or other state constitutions, for the most part, don't have that. California is one that they can even pass constitutional amendments, the people can. In our case, it's just regular legislation, but it is a really unique and awesome power. And we exercise that power as the people of the state of Utah through the initiative and referendum processes. And then, as it says in that next bullet point, it can be done at the state level, the county level, the municipal level. But basically, that's what it is, right? You can either initiate a new law by getting enough signatures, putting it on the ballot, people vote it up or down, or you can do a referendum, which is to repeal a law that the legislative body passed. And the reason why this has been an issue that a lot of people have been talking about over the last couple of months is because of a certain statewide initiative process. And that's on the back side of the sheet of paper that I gave you. And you've probably heard about it, but a few years ago, there were some groups of people, including the League of Women Voters. They had a statewide initiative and they had enough signatures and it went on the ballot and it passed. And that special initiative was to create a redistricting commission. And that redistricting commission basically was charged with looking at the House districts and Senate districts for the Utah legislature. And then they would give recommendations to the legislature, and then the legislature would make a final decision. And in the legislature's mind, that limited their authority, right? And I think to a certain extent, the state legislature didn't recognize this Utah constitutional provision that they don't have all the legislative power. They share it with the people, and the people had the right to put it on the ballot, and it passed. But because the state legislature didn't recognize that constitutional provision, they proceeded to pass a law which effectively gutted and almost entirely repealed, in my view, that initiative, right? And which, if the power, according to the state constitution, is shared between the legislature and the people, that wouldn't make sense that the legislature that could just completely overturn what the people did, right? So it went to the Supreme Court. There's two opinions entitled League of Women Voters versus Utah Legislatures. I numbered them 1 and 2 because the Supreme Court mentions the first one as 1 and there are 2 opinions. So, but they also reference that other constitutional provision that all political power is inherent in the people. And so when it comes to a change of government type provision, the legislature has less authority. The legislative body has less authority than the people to override what the people did. And so basically the Supreme Court said, no, state legislature, you can't just completely throw out what the people did through that initiative. And so what the legislative leaders of the Utah legislature decided to do then was pass or recommend and place on the ballot a constitutional amendment, which would take away effectively our direct legislation power. And they did it in kind of a unique way. Instead of just putting on the ballot, hey, would you like to give up your awesome power that most states don't have, most people in most states have, and just let us, the legislature, kind of be the only legislative body, and you, the people, kind of give up your legislative power. And if they would have put that on the ballot, which would have been much more accurate, even though I've kind of overly ridiculously characterized it, it still would have been more accurate. Nobody would have voted for that, right? Why give up an awesome power that other states don't even have? But instead, they worded it in a way that the state Supreme Court said was very inaccurate. In fact, it was downright misleading and basically said the opposite of what it was. Fortunately, somebody appealed it or took that to a district court judge, and then it got appealed to the Supreme Court. And both courts said, first of all, you didn't follow the provisions in the state constitution requiring that it be published in all 29 counties newspapers. And secondly, it's so misleading that we're just going to take it off the ballot, or effectively they made it void because a lot of the ballots had already been printed. So the court said it's void. None of the votes will count. It's in effect off the ballot. So if you voted for Constitutional Amendment D, either in favor or against, it didn't matter because it was off the ballot, right? And what's interesting is also Constitutional Amendment A was thrown off the ballot for the same reasons. And B and C, I'm convinced, would have as well, but nobody had a couple $100,000 in each instance to take it to court and win, right? But the point is that it's those two cases are very important because the first one was somebody exercising that power and the Supreme Court protecting it. And in the other instance, it was preserving the authority that we have to even do initiatives or referenda at all, which apparently the legislative leaders wanted to take that away. But I love it because it's the rule of law, it's checks and balances. When a state Supreme Court can, tell the legislative leaders, no, that's unconstitutional. I think it shows that our process works, right? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything contrary against any given person, but it is kind of sad when legislative leaders put something that's completely inaccurate on the ballot. But And I'll just editorialize that in the past, all of the language for constitutional amendments has been accurate, mainly because neutral legislative attorneys drafted the language. In this instance, it was the state Senate president and Speaker of the House who drafted the language, and somehow they were not as good at making it neutral. That's all I'm saying. So with that, I didn't leave any time for questions, but hopefully that's at least helpful in explaining our initiative and referendum direct legislative process here in Utah.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed that. We will adjourn until 6 PM. Pass those tissues down here, please.
Duncan, we need to get you on your political soapbox more often.
I'm gonna start saying the word democracy every chance.
I know it's after 6, but
Welcome, everyone. This is the West Jordan City Planning Commission meeting of November 19th, 2024. All commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Gonzalez and Commissioner Hollingsworth. We will begin by reviewing and approving the minutes of our October 15th meeting. Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, before we get started, I'd like to bring up a motion. I noticed that we don't say the Pledge of Allegiance here like we do, in the council meetings. I would propose, and I want to get your feedback on if we started doing that again. I'll
Commissioner
even make
Hatch.
the motion that we start doing the pledge.
Commissioner Hatch.
Sorry, that's fine.
The Canadian will second that motion.
Is there any further discussion to the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We okay, council?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we could always add to the bylaws in the future to make it more formal, but with a motion like you had tonight, you could do it tonight.
Thank you. Okay, minutes. Are any questions or comments on the minutes? I will just comment that once again, that they were exceedingly long, but very well done. Thank you. Commissioner Hatch,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Allen,
I will second that motion.
motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 2, Terrain Plat 6. Presenting on behalf of Third Cadence is Gary Langston.
He's on. You guys hear me? Gary Langston with Third Cadence, representing Wood Ranch Development. That better? And here to tell you a little bit about Plat 6. So this is sort of the next step in our progression of development. So you'll notice that relative to some of the other plats, Plat 6 is a little smaller. It's because we'll actually build Plat 6 and 7 almost simultaneously, even though they're split based on kind of how we do the takedowns. So Plat 44 lots on 16 or so acres. It's has a donut hole, if you'll notice in the middle of it. It's that big red spot that will get filled in with Plat 5. Better. And so in terms of sort of, it's a logical extension of the infrastructure. We're building on to the current KID water and sewer system that feeds the Central Valley. And all of the roads are West Jordan City, as you're already aware of. We'll have the lanes that serve the majority of the garages on the back sides of the units. In most cases, some are front loaded in this particular plat. So at this point, our feeling is it's consistent with the city's plans from the perspective of the PCH zone, certainly compliant with all the elements of the MDA, and we would ask for your approval. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have that are specific to the plat that aren't in your staff report.
Commissioners, any questions?
I have a quick question. So Plat 6 is actually 88 lots? Is it two 44 lot sections?
It's 44 in total in 2 sections.
Okay, so it's, all right, thank you.
So rather than trying to have somebody add up all the different pieces, I just put what the total was for the plat, even though it's in different places.
Okay, thank you. We'll call you back up if we have further questions. Presenting on behalf of the city, Ray McCandless.
Yeah, thank you. So this is Plat 6 here. I think you can see the cursor. It's in 2 areas. There's one right here. And then the other part of that is down here. And then it also includes some of that open space just south of that south set of lots. So the staff has taken a look at it. We've reviewed it. We really don't have any issues or concerns with the plat as proposed. And our recommendation is for approval subject to the conditions that are listed in your staff report.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Allen?
Ray, I thought you were going to retire on this project, but as fast as they're going, it's going to be done by the end of next year. One simple question is, we always have in there stipulation the plat is good for a period of 1 year following approval. What dictates that 1 year? Is it 1 year until they start digging to put in a home or an amenity? What is the caveat?
Yeah, it would be after final plat. So once that comes in, it'd be after the approval of the final plat. And that's when that clock starts ticking.
This item was noticed for public hearing, so public hearing is now open. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to comment on the terrain plat item number 2? Plat 6, item number 2 on the agenda. Anybody on the telephone? Anybody on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised.
There appears to be nobody on Zoom or on phone who wishes to comment. So public hearing is now closed. We're ready for a motion on the item. Commissioner Allen?
Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanation received today, I move that the Planning Commission approve the preliminary subdivision and final sub-area plan for terrain plat 6 subdivision, subject to the requirements of approval listed in the staff report.
Commissioner Thomas?
I'll second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We'll go on to item number 3, aligned transmission line, presenting on behalf of the city, or excuse me, presenting for aligned transmission, Cardell Andrews.
Good afternoon. Ooh, close. Cardell Andrews, I'm with the Line Data Centers. I'm our Senior Director of our technical program. We are building a transmission line to serve our property. This is our 5th building in West Jordan City. So this is our SLC 05 campus. The line, you can kind of see on the screen here, traverses along, yeah, there we go. Traverses along the street, then it comes down what's going to be the new 6600 Street, turns, and then goes over to our site. And then that extends down to our substation on site and eventually extends all the way down to the South Street. We are communicating, one of the key components in talking with the city was communicate with the Echo Ridge community, which is on the north side. We do have 2 members of the Echo Ridge community here who are in support of the project. We've made that introduction. We've had them talk with RMP, who's going to actually build this. So a line will not own the transmission line. We will get power from it, but it will be serviced by RMP. So all the construction design plans would be by RMP. I don't know if there's any questions for me regarding this.
I will ask, I hate to display my ignorance here, but what does aligned transmission do?
Yep, so these are sending electrons to our substation, which then gives our substation power, which powers up our buildings. We do have a building that's currently approved through West Jordan City that's being built. There's 3 planned for this campus with the 4th extension. The 3 buildings were approved. One is about 85% there. What we found out is we need to go through the CUP to get the power to the building. So that building needs this power in order to be served.
What happens inside those buildings?
Sorry, what was that?
What business takes place inside those buildings?
Data center. So everything that the Zoom call that you're talking through, phone calls, we are a co-location company. So the 3 big hyperscale data centers usually take places in our building. So you're looking at the worlds of like your Googles, Microsoft, Amazon, those are which operate in the building. But these buildings are pretty much servers that are connected to the grid and just giving data for all things the world uses these days.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we'll have you back in a minute if we have further questions.
Sounds good.
Presenting on behalf of the city is Megan Jensen.
Yes, thank you. So I'll just fill in a few gaps. So it is all manufacturing zone, and then R18 is the Echo Ridge community. It is considered a major utility, so that's why it's going through the CUP process. Then I'll just fill in on the landscaping a bit. So there's a 20-foot landscape buffer south of Echo Ridge, and then the city park strip, which we maintain. So they're going to remove 59 trees, I believe, and then plant 80 new trees. So that's what it's proposed to look like. And our Public Services Department has reviewed this, and they're okay with everything. So, and then we haven't identified any detrimental effects to be mitigated, so we're recommending approval with no conditions.
Thank you, Megan. Questions or comments by the commissioners? Commissioner Allen?
With the tree removal and replacement, you said I want to clarify, the park strip is owned and operated by the city, the landscape buffer by the HOA?
Yes, that's right.
So who maintains the trees? I assume they're going to redo drip irrigation, some of those kinds of things, or is there no irrigation in there?
I'm not sure about the irrigation. I know they're taking out a lot of the sod in there to reduce the irrigation, but and then putting rocks in there. So
That works. Thanks.
This item also was noticed for public hearing, so public hearing is now open for a line transmission line. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment? Anybody on the phone or on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, please push *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, it looks like we have Zachary Pendleton.
Zachary Pendleton,
Yeah, hi.
go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I won't take three. I'm a member of the Echo Ridge community and member of the board there for that HOA. We've been in contact with Aligned, and they've been really good about speaking with us well in advance of this point in time about what their plans were. We've had a couple of meetings with the community as well, and Aligned has been great about making sure that we had resources to have answers to questions from community members, as well as making sure that Rocky Mountain Power was in attendance at one of those meetings to help answer questions. So we really appreciate that. I think in terms of sentiment from the community, while it's not great news to hear that large transmission lines are going to be built adjacent to your community, I think basically that we understand, that one way or another, there's going to be power lines that would be near our community. And what's being put forth tonight is probably the best case scenario for the community and for Aligned as well. So with that said, I think, like I said, while it's never great news to hear of large power lines coming to your community, I think this is what turns out to be the best case scenario given all of the circumstances.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else who has a hand raised.
Last chance. Okay, public hearing is now closed on item number 3. Commissioner Thomas,
I'll go ahead and make the motion. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Hatch first.
I have a comment, just a question. Why would these lines not be buried? Is it because of voltage? I'm ignorant on, is it voltage? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thomas,
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I can probably answer that too. I've got those high transmission lines in my backyard, and it's just a way for them to distribute the power. And I have had no problems in all the years I've lived there either, so.
Commissioner Thomas, before you make a motion, just let me state for the record that the obligation of the Planning Commission for this item is to identify potentially detrimental effects. So that is the basis of our vote, is that.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make the motion. Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit for a line transmission line located approximately at 6534 West Wells Park Road.
Commissioner Roberts,
I'll second that.
motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 4, residential overlay. Presenting on this item is Larry Gardner.
Yeah. And so this property you see on the screen is about 6.25 acres. It's north of the Grace Company in the West Jordan Center shopping center. It's south of Redwood Memorial Estates, and you can see south of the South Jordan Canal. to the north. How's that for you for directions? South of the South Jordan Canal to the north. Okay, thank you. And the primary reason for this is that in our moderate income housing strategy, um, as you can see down in G, it said update the future land use map in each ROD area to reflect the future and and rezone to ROD. And then the benchmark 8 is complete measure by G by July 31st, 2024. And so the city received a letter of noncompliance because of this. And if you read the measure carefully, it just says that we amend the future land use map to reflect the future rezone to ROD. And so what I want to say clearly is this is not a rezone of property. It is purely a marker on the future land use map that could reflect future zoning to a residential overlay district. There was 3 residential overlay districts identified a few years ago when the ordinance was first passed. One was in Jordan Landing, the other was, and that since went away because of, at that time, Jordan Landing was looking at doing it, but then they changed ownership and decided that they didn't want to do it anymore. The other was where the old Kmart was, but that has since been purchased by H Mart, which is opened a store that's doing quite well at that location. So the final location, based on the ordinance that was identified, was this property that I was speaking of, the 6.25 acres, just north of the Grace Company. In the past, we have been working with a developer who owns the property to build multifamily housing there. However, that has kind of been off and on, and it's more off now than it is on. But what I want to make abundantly clear both to the audience and to the planning commission is that this recommendation to the city council does not carry an entitlement with it. So if all it would do is allow the entitlement to come forth, if there is a project that's suitable, that can meet all the utility constraints and meet all the traffic constraints and meet all the provisions of the residential overlay district ordinance. And if this property was to be rezoned to ROD in the future anyway, we would change the land use map at that time also. This is just a little ahead of that, and it will also get the city in compliance with our moderate income housing strategy with the state of Utah. So again, it is not an entitlement. It is just a recommendation to the city council to change the land use map designation from community commercial to community commercial with potential residential overlay district. Do you have any questions for me?
I see no questions.
A comment. Could they make this any more complicated? That's just all I have to say. The state, not you, not you.
Yes, I think they can.
They could call it a democracy. This item was noticed for public hearing also. Is there anybody in the audience, on the phone or on Zoom, that wishes to comment on item number 4, residential overlay? Please state your name and you'll have 3 minutes to comment. I'm not sure.
There we go. Thank you, AJ. I've worn a lot of hats in this town. I was born in West Jordan. My grandparents moved here in the 30s. I'm a business owner. I'm a property owner. My name is Gary Cannon. My address is 1397 West, 13400 South Riverton. Apologize for not saying that first. I know bitter Matt, and I happen to be on the Riverton City Planning Commission, so I appreciate the efforts you guys, the time and energy you put into this, into your service. Been very proud of some of the subdivisions I've done in this town. Very proud of a couple of them, and there's a couple of them that I question what went sideways on them, and you guys have had to deal with that after the fact. But I'm here tonight as a representative of the South Jordan Canal, which has been mentioned a couple times. There was some significant time put into, might be the current owner, might be the last owner, as far as access. I just wanted more than anything to let you know that we are worried about what this ends up looking like. And I appreciate Larry and mine and his relationship. Man, we've had some good times, I'll tell you, with subdivisions, but I appreciate that. But more than anything, we're all about safety and reducing liability on the South Jordan Canal and that area through there. Even with the past medical use that was proposed, that was 2-3 years ago. I don't know what happened there, but more than anything, that's why I'm here, is just to let you know that we want to be involved in what that access looks like in the event this does go to residential, because it's we have a lot of challenges on this road, especially in that area right there. And just please make sure we're involved in what happens. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. You guys have been great. I'll probably be seeing you again.
Thank you for your interest in this. We are concerned about safety as well. Are there other comments? Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Michael Hansen. I actually live on Canal Road, just north and east of the property. I'm here speaking in behalf of my grandmother, where she lives, and my wife and I are trying to purchase her home. We're concerned about the property being turned into high, I'm not sure what the term is, high density, thank you, high density apartments or anything like that, due to the fact that there's no room on Canal Road for people to be traveling up and down the road. It is currently closed from access at Redwood Road. We're just not sure we want more traffic or any kind of vehicles and things going up and down Canal Road. There are parts of the road where it's a little over 13.5 feet wide, so 2 people can't pass. One has to pull over and allow the other person that is on the canal side to pass. So we're concerned that they would, if they turn it into apartments or high density housing, that it would be an issue for those of us that still live on Canal Road. And I can't speak for everybody, but we had a meeting a couple years ago where the proposed owners were wanting to put high density apartments by putting a multi-level parking garage and apartments on top of that. And they said it could house up to 1,200 residents. We just don't think that's a good idea, especially due to the fact that there's so many people that try to come down Canal Road and bypass and go around to get access to Redwood Road. So we're just concerned about it being turned into anything where it would be any kind of high density housing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, public hearing is now closed. Can somebody from the staff comment on the potential traffic issues with this application?
So, like I said, this isn't an entitlement. And so, this isn't even close to a site plan approval. But the one thing I can say is the one that we were working on a couple of years ago that Mr. Hanson was referring to, the developer at that time had hired Havin as consultant to do that. The proposal at that time was to have absolutely no access down Canal Road at that time, but that never even made it to a preliminary approval stage with the planning commission. But those were the discussions at that time. And like I said, this will have to go through so many phases of approval. First of all, the zone change will have to occur, and then there'll have to be a site plan approval. And so all those things will be vetted at that time. Paul, I don't know, as fire marshal, if you have any comments at this time about that, or, whether access is even needed on Canal Road for fire safety concerns. So.
This isn't my microphone. This is Todd's microphone, so it's not working properly. I used to have a microphone, but not anymore. Yeah, we, in one of the iterations of the plan we saw, they have to have two access egress points if they're doing an apartment complex. What one of the suggestions was to do a limited access down into the shopping center with an easement, and that would give them the second access that they needed. As you can see, Grace Company owns the big building, the old Target building, and they would give, in the developer was looking to add a second access into that parking lot, which would satisfy the fire code. So they were trying really hard not to open up Canal Road for access with the people. But that was, like I say, that was an iteration many moons ago, and we haven't seen anything since. But it can be done so we don't have to burden Canal Road with a lot of traffic on it. How that looks, I don't know.
Are there any further questions or comments? So to be clear, the only thing the planning commission is actually doing tonight is voting on a general plan future land use map amendment
A recommendation to the council.
recommended to
Yep.
the council. All the other detail about access and safety, that all comes later, right? Okay. With that, is there anybody who wishes to make a motion? Commissioner Hatch?
Based on the information and criteria set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council amending the general plan future land use map on 6.23 acres of property located at 6676 and 6686 South Redwood Road, adding the future land use designation of potential residential overlay district, or ROD.
Commissioner Allen.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item number 5, Copper Meadows annexation. Ronnie Jones.
So, oh yeah.
Jones, but I am Jeff Seaman with Peterson Development, and I was here last month, and I'd like to thank you and Julie for taking notes, and you all for approving those minutes. It's my fault that they were extra long, but I thought actually we had taken care of this at that time, but at least I was able to return to take a look at Paul. So thanks. Essentially what's being asked tonight is, you see that the map, the vicinity map, there's 1.38 acres approximately of this project that are not within the city bounds. And so we're just asking for an annexation of that so we can continue on with this project. So that said, pretty simple. Any other questions? Happy to answer them.
Thank you.
And I could probably add in there that the reason why this was required tonight is in part because of a code section we have in our city code 13-5-4 that requires certain things. And just to make sure that we didn't inadvertently miss that through our regular process, in a perfect world, this would have been included in with what you did a month ago. We wanted to make sure that there was specifically a recommendation as to the zoning to PC and the future land use map to low density residential, even though that's what you've already approved for the entire piece. We wanted to make sure we complied with this specific current city code section as to this 1.38 acres, that is the designation for zoning and future land use map for this piece as well, not just for the entire development. So it's clear for the record that we're following our code section as this moves forward to the council tomorrow night.
Thank you for that clarification. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Seaman? Thank you. Does anybody from the staff have anything else to say about this application? Public hearing is now open then for this item, Copper Meadows annexation. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment? Anybody on phone or anybody on Zoom? We'll wait 10 more seconds. Public hearing is now closed. Is there anybody who wishes to make a motion? Commissioner Allen?
I move that the planning commission make a recommendation of approval to the city council for the proposed annexation of 1.38 acres and the requested zoning designation of PC, subject to the Copper Meadows MDA MDP.
Can I interrupt? So Duncan, did we need a land use map designation in there? Oh, so.
Yeah, that was the part I was going to mention too, is that the wording on the agenda is the most accurate. So you want to include both the zoning and the future land use map. So maybe not use the regular recommended motion, but add in the part about the future land use map of low density residential designation. We want to make sure you get both of those in the motion.
You got that, Commissioner Allen?
I move that the planning commission make a recommendation of approval to the city council for the proposed annexation of 1.38 acres and the requested zoning designation of PC, subject to the Copper Meadows MDA MDP and future land use of low density residential.
Is there a second? Commissioner Hatch?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We'll move to item number 6, Water Conservation Plan. Greg Davenport.
Somebody give me the clicker. I'm gonna go to this page. Just as introduction, I'm Greg Davenport. I'm with the West Jordan Public Utilities Department. I'm here to talk about the 2024 Water Conservation Plan. In 1998, the Utah legislature passed the Water Conservation Plan Act, which requires cities over 500 or more connections to submit a plan update to the Division of Water, Utah Division of Water, every 5 years. Our first one was in 1999. We did that every 5 years. Our last one was 2019. And we're here to gather input from the community. As you can see on this chart, West Jordan, and I may, for the final one, put a number on there of where we started. When we started this back in 1999, we were somewhere around 207 gallons per person for an average day. We have done a great job. So if you look at this chart starts in 2015, which was when the last one, the design period for the last one up till today. And we've made progress, except for a few years, we've made steady progress. This year will probably also be an outlier, but I'm very happy with what the residents have done. Okay, there's feedback when you use both marks. Okay.
They like to give you feedback.
Okay. All right. Here's some things that are offered to the West Jordan residents right now. There are educational resources that are offered to our residents. Some of those are Slow the Flow campaign, which is a media campaign. There's also the Localscapes educational program that's offered by Jordan Valley that teaches people how to design their yards so that they can be low water use but still be beautiful. And they also offer the Jordan Valley Conservation Garden that you can go to help give you inspiration. Through Jordan Valley, there are also incentives for people who use water conservation. There's Flip Your Strip, toilet rebates, smart controller rebates, and the city, I won't call it an incentive program, but we do offer a tier rate system today that encourages people to also conserve. In this new plan, we're proposing some updates to what we're doing currently right now. So we want to continue to use a water conservation committee. We go to the sustainability committee and talk with them about conservation. We also want to put more information on the city website with the conservation plan that has links to the Jordan Valley page and to things like when you should water your lawn and things like that. We want to continue to utilize the water efficient landscaping ordinance. That will probably be a requirement by the state in the next 5 years. There may be even some more that's added to that. So I imagine we'll be coming back in the next 5 years with an update to that. We'll still continue to use the tier water rights. And the other thing that we have been doing that we'll continue to do is, if you haven't noticed, we have started to replace water landscaping that requires a lot of water in our facilities with water-wise landscaping. Some of those have happened at the Pioneer Hall facility and also at City Hall. And we'd like to get even more grants to be able to do that. We'd also like to get leak mitigation or investigation devices that can help us to better find leaks for our property and other properties in the city. Of course, there has to be an evaluation process with this, and every year we'll try and see how those measures are working and seeing if we're meeting our annual waters goal of 170 gallons per capita day. Do you have any questions?
Commissioner Hatch.
Is there any, there's a lot of HOAs in West Jordan now, and in my HOA, I'm on the board, and we have for many years tried to get rid of all of our turf and do water-wise. It is just cost prohibitive. And there really isn't anything incentive-wise offered to HOAs. Is there any plan to create some sort of incentive to the multiple HOAs in West Jordan city boundaries that would like to take their turf out?
We had a city council person also ask about that. That is something I can ask city council. Of course, Jordan Valley always has those programs.
It does, it's not, it's still, for our little chunk of grass, it's like $14,000, and that's with the rebate.
Right. So that's a good question. That's something I'll bring up to city council if they'd be interested in doing something like that. I think it would help HOAs, as you say.
Well,
to-
and more HOAs are being approved, and that seems to be the development path. So it just makes sense to offer something that incentivizes them as well. Thank
Yeah,
you.
That's a great comment. I appreciate that comment.
I would just add to that, that the incentives that are offered don't seem to be enough, at least they're not enough in my case, to motivate me to make a change. So I still have a lot of green grass, using a lot of water.
That's a great comment. Again, I'll take all those to city council. The incentive programs that are offered are something that they would have to approve.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay.
Okay, this item was noticed for public hearing. So public hearing is now open regarding the water conservation plan. Anybody in the audience? Anybody on phone or on Zoom?
There's nobody on Zoom anymore.
All of our Zoomies have gone. There's nobody here, so public hearing is now closed. Before we go to a vote on this issue, I want to say, first of all, that I like water. So I appreciate somebody working to conserve it. Back in July or August, my wife came charging out of the office with a slip of paper in her hand and said, "You got to see our utility bill. We're using, you're watering the lawn way, way too much. We used 400 gallons last month." And I said, "I don't think so." And so that was the end of that conversation. A few weeks later, we got a notice in the mail about potential from the city about potential leakage in our system. So I went and looked, found out that our water heater had been leaking water for I don't know how long, about 400 gallons a month. So we have replaced it with a tankless water heater.
And your wife got flowers.
No. I'm not that nice. But I thank you for the portion of your plan, which includes the system leakage prevention process. So thank you. With that, we'll entertain a motion to approve or recommend approval of the water conservation plan. Commissioner Allen?
I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to adopt the West Jordan Water Conservation Plan adopted in Appendix B of the West Jordan Water Master Plan and referenced in the West Jordan General Plan.
Mr. Thomas?
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? Okay. Item number 7 has been pulled from the agenda. Item number 8 is a text amendment. Larry Gardner.
So this again is to bring us in compliance with the state of Utah moderate income housing plan strategy. And the strategy, if you can see as B, is to the measure is to determine how moderate income housing should be integrated into the city center zone. And also A, it says, analyze the city center zone ordinance to determine the percentage of and qualifications for new moderate income housing development. And so the original intent, as I said in the pre-meeting, was to base the amendment to the city center zone ordinance on the newly adopted in July of 2024, 3-station area plan. But the state said that we were not in compliance because we had not adopted or had not met our strategy. And so this will amend the city center ordinance and will bring us into compliance with our strategy in the moderate income housing plan, and hopefully the state of Utah will accept it this time. And so a couple of housekeeping items, ever since it's been approved, the city center zone, I don't know, Scott, was what approved in 2005 or something like it, to 2007. So, 17 years ago. It never was on the use table as a permitted use in the city center core, and that's where most of the housing will be. But it was referenced in the ordinance as if it was a permitted use. It talked about density ranges and styles and development. And so I believe it was just an oversight when they adopted the ordinance. And so this will give us an opportunity to clean up the use table, and it will allow residential multifamily over 45 feet in height as a permitted use, and also residential multifamily under 45 feet as a permitted use. The other thing that this ordinance will amend is 13.5I5, which is residential density. It will add letter C, which states all residential uses shall contain a minimum 10% moderate income housing based on total unit count for each building. So it'll be each building has to have moderate income housing, so that they can't say, well, we're going to do that with building Z. They have to do it in portions of every building. And or project is approved by the city council through a master development agreement. Now, the reason, Duncan, you can correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but these need to be approved through a master development agreement. So the developer is fully aware that they need to pay for the moderate income housing and not the city. If we don't get it through some kind of density increase or through a master development agreement, then the city is on the hook to pay for it, according to state law. So yes, Trish, it does get more complicated, as you can see. And hopefully, I said earlier, when we update this ordinance more in depth in the future, here in the near future, we will probably work out the language so it's a little more sophisticated than just this. And it also, the density ranges on the table you see at the bottom, those reflect the density ranges that are recommended in the 3-station area plan that was just amended. And so with this ordinance, we'll clean up a use table, add moderate income housing as a component of the housing built there, and increase the density or add another use category, mixed use commercial, that will have a minimum density of 14 and a maximum density of 80 units per acre. Do you have any questions for me?
I see none.
We have a room full of people ready to talk on this, so.
This item was noticed for public hearing, so public hearing is now open for the text amendment regarding city center zones. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment, or anybody on phone or on Zoom? Seeing none and hearing none, public hearing is now closed. I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Thomas.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. Based on the information and criteria set forth in the staff report, and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council amending the West Jordan City CC City Center Zone Code, Section 13-51-5, residential density, adding the requirements for moderate income housing and amending maximum residential density.
Commissioner Hatch.
It's actually 13-5I-5, but I will second that.
Thank
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We will move now to item number 9, another text amendment regarding alcohol beverage control. Speaking on behalf of the city will be Alan Anderson.
Thank you, commissioners. Good to be here. It's loud. I'm here tonight talking about the Title 17 alcohol ordinance that we have in our city code. We're simplifying it. There's been changes in city code. The council was amenable in a work session to move forward. It cuts the pages down from 33 pages to 8. The Alcohol Beverage Control Act in the state of Utah governs the sale, distribution, and consumption of alcoholic beverages in Utah, regulates the sales, controls the distribution, what type of licenses are issued. The enforcement is done by the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control, which I think has a new name now. And also they deal with the public health and safety. So what we have done, what the council has done is reduced it. Let me get to my notes here. Reduce the page count as I mentioned. The repetitive state requirements have been omitted so that we have the state and we are aligned with the state code. The process for obtaining a city issued permit have been simplified, making it more business friendly. The current practices of the business licensing division are accurately reflected. And then the last city council meeting, they have adopted an administrative code enforcement hearing program where a lot of the infractions, notice of violations would come to an administrative law judge, an ALJ. And those have been referenced in this code. So that is what's being proposed tonight.
Thank you. I see no questions for you. So this item also was noticed for public hearing, so public hearing is now open. There's nobody left in the audience except the mayor. Have anything to say about this? No. Still nobody on phone or on Zoom? Okay, public hearing is now closed. Entertain a motion. Commissioner Hatch.
Where did my emotion go? Okay, recommendation to the city council to amend the West Jordan City Code Title 17 Alcohol Beverage Control and Uses.
Commissioner Allen,
I'll second that.
motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. We're on now to the last item, number 10, text amendment on regarding annexations. Duncan Murray.
Okay, so we talked about this a little during the pre-meeting. In your packet, you can see the redlining. We pretty much just are proposing striking the whole section and then redrafting it. There's two types of annexations. One is new development, which is subsection A of the new proposed section, and then existing development, B. An example of existing development annexation is there's actually one underway right now, the Ochre Highlands. It's I think about 700 or 800 units already exists, already built out in the unincorporated county. We've gone through a very lengthy process. It's taken about 2 years. And we're right at the end of the process right now. The petitions are being circulated by the people who live there. And just to give you some context, and the recorder's office will probably end up certifying by the end of the calendar year that there's sufficient signatures would be my anticipated result that I see. And if that's the case, then even under this new section, what would happen is you would have to weigh in on that as to what the zoning and future land use map designations are, just like you did tonight for this small one. This would be for, can't remember how many acres that is, but quite a few. And and for context, the Wood Ranch, when that additional area was added in, that was part of a peninsula and it created an island. This is the eastmost part of that big island that already has all those houses in it. But then this code section here says that once they get to that point, then we'd come to you as a planning commission and then you would weigh in on the zoning and the future land use map designation. Granted, it's built out, right? But it still needs to have those map designations. And a question we had earlier that when does the county need to weigh in on these processes? It's when there is a peninsula or island. So with Wood Ranch, we had to get the county's advance approval, which they gave, and then they said as long as we attempted to annex the rest of the island, which we're doing in part with this one that's coming up. With the 1.3 acres that you had earlier on your agenda, that wasn't an island or peninsula, right? It was just on the edge of the city. There's no island or peninsula there. So that's kind of what that turns on. The main part of the section really is the subsection A dealing with new development. And what it basically just says is with anything in the future after this ordinance is adopted, that's why I picked December 18th, because the council will have potentially considered and approved it by that date, either the 4th or the 18th. But then your main responsibility is just to weigh in on like I say, the zoning and the future land use map designation, unless the council or state law gives you some other role to play. But what we wanted to do is, like I say, simplify it, make it match up with state law, and not inadvertently require something that's not required by state law that somehow throws off our procedural processes. But that's pretty much it. That's and of course it's been retitled. It used to say newly annexed territories. Now it's annexations of real property into the city, whether they're already built out areas or ones planning to be developed. Any questions for me? Okay.
It appears there are no questions. This item was noticed for public hearing, so public hearing is now open regarding the text amendment on annexations. There's nobody on the phone or in the audience or on Zoom, therefore public hearing is now closed. I will entertain a motion to approve this amendment. Yes. Commissioner Roberts?
I will go ahead and make the motion. Based on the information and criteria set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for this application.
Commissioner Allen?
I second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Thomas?
Go ahead if you want to.
I was going to make a motion that you make a motion.
Oh. I make a motion that we adjourn.
We are adjourned.
Wow.
That was the whole point of it.